It's just messy. It's just gross and messy. This magnificent dick soap. I do not have positive feelings towards goop. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another episode of Pleasure Trove. This is the series where we discuss things in the news, media and culture all to do with sex and relationships. And there is a lot in this episode because it has been a while since I have filmed one of these, and so the news stories have just been piling up. There has been so much in the last few months that has happened. Some of these will feel like old stories to you, but I just still think that they're important to talk about and to continue the conversation, and also just keep an eye on, because sometimes we find that, especially when it's a negative story, which a lot of these are, there is a big backlash, there is a lot of outrage, and then it just kind of disappears. And I just want to say that it is really important to keep these conversations going, even if it's not about the specific news story, but the themes and the topics and the issues that they raise are things that are important all of the time, whether or not there is a current thing in the news about them. With all of that being said, some content warnings for this episode, including transphobia, violence against women and abortion, and if there's any that I'm missing just now, then they'll be written in the description. Also, this is not a news show. I am not a journalist. I am just a sex educator, a sex nerd who wants to make the world a better place, and I want to talk about some of these things that have been going on with you, start a conversation, continue the conversation, and kind of reflect a bit. But this should by no means be where you get your news from. So the first part of this video is going to be pretty heavy, but it is a Pleasure Trove episode. So at the end of the video, I do have some fun things to show you as well. So hopefully we can kind of end on a high. We love a good tonal shift. But to start with, in the news. News. So recently the BBC published a really transphobic article that portrayed a lot of trans women as sexual predators, that they're pressuring cis lesbians into sex with them, and there was a massive backlash against this. There is an open letter, a lot of people made complaints to the BBC and got a very disappointing response from the BBC in terms of them keeping the article up and standing by it. If you want to understand more about why the article was transphobic, then definitely read the open letter, which I'll link in the description, as that really details what the article is saying and its impact and the harm on trans people. And it just goes to show what a lot of trans people have been saying for so long, which is that it's really scary times. This is a BBC article. The BBC is supposed to be our state-run, paid by taxpayers' money, impartial news. It's meant to be neutral. That's the whole point of it. But once again, we see things like trans rights being up for debate when it is just not a debate. The BBC has so far made one amendment to the article, which is to remove the inclusion of Lily Cade, who was quoted in the article, who is a lesbian porn performer, and she has several allegations of sexual assault against her, and recently wrote some really horrific transphobic stuff on her blog. Really horrible, I will not repeat here. And the BBC said they removed her contribution in light of recent comments on her blog posts. But then they also said that they acknowledge that admission of her inappropriate behaviour should have been in the original article, because they were aware. Trans porn performer Chelsea Poe said that she'd been interviewed by the journalist and had informed the BBC about Lily Cade's sexual assault allegations that were against her, and the BBC didn't put Chelsea Poe in the article, but still included Lily Cade without mention of the allegations. In more real bad news, we have been faced with yet more victim blaming when it comes to gendered violence, violence against women, or what I see a lot of people calling now male violence, because violence against women, just that term makes it seem really passive, and it's just like, oh, these women, they are being hurt by who? Not relevant. Whereas statistically, it is men. And so a lot of people are just like, let's use the term male violence, because by acknowledging the actual cause of the problem rather than the like result of the problem, we could actually potentially tackle this. However, victim blaming is rife. We saw this with the Met Police's statements after the Sarah Everard trial, and all of the details about that came out. And the Met Police is saying that if a lone police officer tries to arrest you, ask them where their colleagues are, ask why they're there, as if you're then not going to get done for resisting arrest. They're telling women to shout and run into a nearby house, or wave a bus down, or call 999. And you're just like, how long is this list of things that women need to do to keep ourselves safe from men? And then the Home Office coming out with this like 888 walk me home phone line, as if it's women's whereabouts that need to be tracked. And then more recently, with a lot of news stories that have been coming out about spiking in clubs and in bars, just like this messaging of like, don't get spiked, and if you think you're spiked, call the police. And it's like, you've been spiked, you're not necessarily going to be in control of your actions. That's like the whole point. And just the lack of messaging around, hey, don't spike people. It's honestly exhausting. I'd love to hear in the comments if people know of any charities, organizations, or like groups and clubs where men can discuss amongst themselves, where it's like a safe space for men who can talk about masculinity, who can hold each other accountable for their behaviors and actions and thoughts, and try and like unpick a lot of patriarchy, basically. There's one charity called Beyond Equality that I know of, which I'll link in the description, that do a lot of work around masculinity. But if people have any other suggestions, like, please leave them in the comments, because this is not a women's problem, it's a men's problem. So men, like, please sort your shit out. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the OnlyFans debacle that happened a while ago, where they tried to ban sexually explicit content from their site. There was a massive backlash, as there should be, because sex workers built that platform, and we see this happening over and over again. And I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in episodes of Pleasure Trove, where sex workers are just being squeezed out of every corner of the internet. Like, they will build a platform, they will like make a platform like what it is, and then they'll be kicked off. They'll be like, you're not welcome here. But there was this massive backlash, and then OnlyFans went back on it, and I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if anything like quietly has happened, but it wasn't like they completely cancelled the plans. They said that they're like being postponed or delayed or something. So I wouldn't really call this a win. It's like maybe a mini win, but it's not necessarily like individual platforms that are to blame for this. OnlyFans changed their guidelines because of MasterCard. It's these credit card companies that are putting these guidelines in place which ostracize sex workers, and so then all of these platforms have to comply if they're going to use like MasterCard or Visa's services so that people can make transactions on their websites. The argument that tends to get thrown around by these companies that put these guidelines in place is that it is to protect people from sex trafficking, but I would highly recommend that you and the people making these rules listen to the podcast episode on sex trafficking by You're Wrong About. It is very US focused in its specific examples, but it paints a really great picture as to why all of these different anti-trafficking laws and rules and guidelines don't actually help trafficking victims, don't actually help to stop or prevent sex trafficking, and actually what they do is they harm sex workers. They make sex work more precarious, more dangerous, makes it even more difficult for people who maybe want to do something other than sex work be able to do that. It harms like sex workers' bottom line in terms of their income. So worth keeping an eye on OnlyFans and seeing if they try and like do it again, but quieter. I don't know. And then the final news story that I wanted to talk about is Texas banning abortion after 6 weeks. Now this just makes me so angry and so scared, and not just for the people who could get pregnant in Texas who are trying to access abortion, but what kind of precedent this could potentially set for the rest of the United States, and then other countries as well. It kind of just shows to me how unsafe our abortion laws are, and just how with certain people in positions of power, like, those rights could be taken away from you at any time. But here's the thing about the 6 weeks. A lot of people, most people, do not know that they are even pregnant. Like, 6 weeks is so early. I only found out that I was pregnant at 5 weeks, but that was because I wanted to be pregnant and I was seriously like tracking these things, but I didn't get any symptoms until 7 weeks. But the way that pregnancy is calculated is it isn't calculated from conception, it's calculated from the first day of your last period. So if you are someone with a miraculous 28-day cycle, wow, what's that like? Then by the time it comes to you potentially missing your period, you're already at 4 weeks. And then maybe you're like, my period might be late for all sorts of other reasons. Like, periods can be late for so many other reasons than pregnancy. And so maybe it gets to 5 weeks and you're like, oh, okay, my period's a week late. Weird, okay. And maybe for some reason you can't get access to a pregnancy test. Or maybe you do and you find out that you're pregnant, but then you have a week, and there are so many different hoops that people have to jump through in order to get the abortion. Maybe they have got children to look after. Maybe they have work as well. Maybe their nearest abortion clinic provider is really far away and they don't have appointments, or like can't like get to them in time. Like, it's infuriating. And that's then if you do find out you're pregnant before 6 weeks, it's a living nightmare. And the really gross thing about this law is this like $10,000 bounty. So private citizens can sue other citizens in a civil case if they have helped someone access an abortion, and they can sue providers of abortions. And then if they win the case, then they get rewarded with at least $10,000. And so it's like creating these like individual bounty hunters. And it just feels like this law is just encouraging neighbors to like snitch on each other. And like, who are you supposed to trust? Like, it's really horrible. And on that note, does anyone have any good news? Like, please leave in the comments any good news in the world of sex and relationships, or any organizations, campaigns, things that people are doing to help combat all of these different things. Leave them in the comments. Spread like the word about what we can do, but also just like any fun good news as well. And I'm really sorry that this has been a downer, but now I have some fun stuff as well to share with you and hopefully lift our spirits. So next up in books, I have a lovely yellow book to share with you. This is Sex Ed, an inclusive teenage guide to sex and relationships, and this was made by the School of Sexuality Education, previously Sex Plain. I absolutely love the School of Sex Ed, and this is their book for teenagers, but also for teachers and adults and parents, all about sex and relationships. The School of Sex Ed go into schools and deliver sex education classes, and they are just so wonderful, and I'm so excited that they have brought out a book, and I wanted to share it with you. I know some of you are teachers, maybe you could get this in like your school libraries and stuff, and yes, wouldn't that be good? But here's some things that it includes: consent, gender, sexuality and identity, relationships, the body, what is sex? We've discussed that. Reproductive health, sexual health, body image, online life, and then there's also in the back parents' notes and teachers' notes. So if you are a parent or a teacher and you want to read this book or use this book with your young people, then there's some like notes and guides on how best to do that. But yes. In the world of YouTube, I've got a couple of videos from Sexplanations that I wanted to share and talk about because it's getting those cogs turning real good. Like, obviously, Dr. Lindsay Doe makes incredible incredible videos. And recently she put out these videos about like self-censorship when it comes to sex education, because of all of these different rules and guidelines in terms of the platforms that we put our sex education content on, but then also because of social values around sex as well. And I'll link to all of the videos in the description, because I think she starts a really interesting conversation that even like I don't know where I completely stand on, because I was also raised in this society that does have like a fear of sex. So some of that is like also in me. But one of the examples that she was giving is like hands-on or like fully nude demonstrations. So like, how do you teach someone like how to finger someone, but without actually showing fingering? Like, we're just always using like models and like sanitized versions. And there is this website called Sex School Hub, I think. If that's wrong, it'll be linked in the description. And that's like a sex ed school started by some porn performers, and it's like for 18 plus, and it is basically explicit sex ed. So there's like explicit sex ed lessons in terms of like how to do certain stuff, and then actually seeing the porn performers show you on real bodies and doing it. And obviously that's gated behind like an 18 plus wall, and because there's like a porn element there, it is not appropriate for young people. But there are ways, and there should be ways, that we can do real body demonstrations of things like how to clean your genitals, or like how to check your genitals, how to check your breasts, what different parts of the genitals look like in terms of just like anatomy demonstrations and stuff like that. But we're so scared in this society of like sexualizing children that we're just like, well, we can't do that. But also like these platforms mean that we can't do it as well, because can't be having nudity on YouTube, can't be having any of those female presenting nipples, can we? Okay, next up I have some TV pleasure trove favorites. Now, it turns out that all of these things that I wanted to talk about are on Netflix, and I feel like I can't just talk about a bunch of Netflix shows and be like, aren't they great, without acknowledging what happened recently with the Dave Chappelle comedy special and his transphobic comments in that, and then the big backlash against that, and then the CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, saying that content doesn't directly translate to real world harm when Netflix hosts the documentary Disclosure, which is about representation of trans people in the media and how it does directly relate to real world harm. Ted, how'd you put those two things together? A bunch of trans Netflix employees and allies staged a walkout recently, but I'm not sure if anything has really happened beyond that. And yeah, watch Disclosure on Netflix. It's great documentary. But Sex Education season 3 came out recently, which if you haven't seen, I did an entire live stream talking about the recent series, which was a lot of fun. But also, if you watched the latest episode of the Hormone Diaries, you will know that I was feeling like crap whilst doing that live stream. But honestly, the adrenaline of doing the live stream, man, I pulled through. But whew, I was feeling rough from pregnancy that day. Big Mouth season 5 just came out, which is honestly wild to me, because I'm like, what happened in seasons 3 and 4? But in general, I love Big Mouth. I've only watched the first 2 episodes of the new season, but I love that they've brought back the Shame Wizard, because they did kind of like beat the Shame Wizard like at the end of season 2, with them all voicing what their things are that they like feel shame about, and actually like breaking the silence around shame. But the Shame Wizard comes back because it's not as simple as that. Shame, it comes and gets us at all different stages of life, not just puberty, unfortunately. But it's real, we're definitely real big at puberty. Also, season 5 is rated 18, or all of the other seasons rated 18, because, I mean, it takes a lot for a cartoon to get rated an 18, but it is so crude. If you don't know, Big Mouth is about a bunch of teenagers going through puberty, and it's a cartoon very much aimed at adults. But it is so funny, it's so rude. It goes places where you're just like, oh my god. Like, it definitely does things that you absolutely could not do if it was real actors. You absolutely could not do it with real actors. Like, it works because it is a cartoon and there is this like fantasy element with like the shame wizard and the hormone monsters and the depression kitty, and I love this show so much. And then the final show that I wanted to talk about, I haven't watched, but I wanted to put to you as a, should I watch this? Should I do this to myself? Which is the Sex, Love and Goop show. Now, I do not have positive feelings towards Goop, but do I watch it for research purposes? Just to like know what the situation is. Even if it turns out that this show is actually really good, right? Say it turns out it's great and it has lots of really good messaging around sex and love and relationships. It's still coming from a company that just put out a DTF vitamin meant to fix female low desire, which isn't a thing. Like, there is no vitamin that you can take to be more horny, and I'm mad about it because also low desire shouldn't be pathologized. So I'm not a fan of that. And also the founder of Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow, in their last series that they did with Netflix called The Goop Lab, in the like masturbation episode that they did on that, was when Gwyneth Paltrow first learnt the difference between the vulva and the vagina. Now, no shame at all in older women, whatever age you are, learning that there is a difference there. However, this is a woman that was selling jade eggs for your vagina, selling vaginal steaming products, and selling products for your genital region, but she didn't know the difference, and it makes me mad. Anyway, should I watch Sex, Love and Goop? Has anyone watched it? Let me know your thoughts. And then finally, I've got some stuff, some physical things to show you. So you may have seen the video that I did with Godemiche, where I went to their office, went to their studio, made some silicone dildos. Well, I came away with some toys that day, but I also came away with this magnificent dick soap. Now, it was bigger than this, and the head of the dick was a bit more pronounced, but I have been washing my hands on it for the last few months, but I am fully obsessed with this. I think that this is absolutely genius, because obviously they already have molds for their dildos, and then they were just thinking like, why don't we just make some soap as well? And I think that this is just absolutely glorious, and I get so much joy from washing my hands on it. It's so good. And then also I wanted to share with you my fine bone massage candle called Latest Flame. Love it. You may remember my toy, my ceramic dildo Prudence, which is also by the same company, Finebone, and this is the second product that they've released, which is a massage candle, and it smells like chocolate, which I wasn't expecting to like, but it's good. And also, I have never really used like sexy massage candles before. They are different to regular candles because, and I can't believe I never like put two and two together about this before, because the wax melts but it becomes massage oil, and like you don't want to be using regular candle wax as massage oil. And I love that it has this like little tip, and so you can like pour it out. I love it. I love it. It's great. This has been a monster episode of Pleasure Trove, but it has been a few months, so I feel like I was like packing lots of stuff into it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments some stuff that you've been enjoying recently in the realm of sex and relationships, books, TV, films, products, whatever it is. Would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.